Hey everybody, today's April 2026. April 26, 2026, and you're listening to the While We Still Can podcast. Today we've got Sean Anderson with us. He's a citizen journalist that we're excited to hear his perspective and thought process and how he came to believe what he believes. So Sean, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your evolution from say 2011 when you were joining the Marines till to how you feel about the world around us now today.
Well, I would say having gone through two primary institutions of and what I would consider to be indoctrination, which is the military as a whole, and then after I was honorably discharged from the United States Marine Corps, I went had the GI Bill pay for my school, which I obviously naively and as a result of my ignorance thought was going to be a learning experience, but then quickly realized that university is just another institution, just basically just rolling out system servers. That's not to say that everybody that's gone to university or everybody that's been in the military is a mind controlled program, so to speak. But nevertheless, this was my individual personal experience. Being able to recognize and see between the veneer of lies, so to speak, in school made me start to question what I was being told, and what teachers were telling me is the truth, and that just basically got me researching. I would say, opposition points in regards to what the teachers were telling me, and that just gradually increased my awareness and just it brought me to deeper and deeper levels of what would be considered the rabbit hole, so to speak. So, but I mean, if you look at education as an institution, I mean, you take a test, and ultimately, I mean, what is the basis of a test? I mean, it's just for you to parrot back what the system has told you to believe. So ultimately, they're just you tell the system what it wants to hear, you parrot it back, and then you're able to, pass the class. And that's just basically the evolution of university. I mean, with minor exceptions, but overall, you're being told what to think rather than how to, use your own critical analysis and, discernment. So that's was basically the process of my
Ask what your major
evolution.
was when you were in college?
I got a bachelor's degree in political science.
That would make sense. Yes. That would make your So what's your opinion on like science base as far as like healthcare and stuff? What do you think
I
that the
mean,
teaching is different there because
I didn't get the end of that.
do you think that
Allopathic medicine
like
as a whole is great.
What were you saying about allopathic medicine?
I mean, allopathic medicine as a whole, which is the, big pharmaceutical model based on, it's either drugs or scalpel, which was created by the Rockefellers, to dismiss homeopathic medicine, medicine at a vibrational level, vibrational medicine, medicine in its energetic form rather than, switching from that to focusing on what we perceive to be the physical body to where the doctor is, and not, once again, I'm not generalizing when I say these things. I know there's, positive people who have our well-being at heart in every aspect of society, but ultimately a doctor is just either prescribing you drugs based on what the American Medical Association has told him to do. Not to mention doctors get incentivized to vaccinate children. They're incentivized to push drugs on their patients. So it's either that or they're just going to cut you open. So, and just a logical conclusion is that big pharma only profits when you're sick. So obviously they need a sick population in order to keep their pharmaceutical racket alive. So it's based off you being sick and treating symptoms rather than finding what the root cause of those symptoms are. So ultimately it's a extremely
Well, I'm just
detrimental
going to jump
to
in here
our
for a minute.
well-being and doesn't have our well-being at heart.
So, in full disclosure, I'm actually a general surgeon, and I can tell you that there's a lot, whereas there's a lot that our medical system can improve upon, which I could talk all day about that. I think that the most of us that have gone through medical training have done so with the patient's best interest at heart. And I can tell you there's a lot of things that,
Yeah,
like if a
absolutely.
person has a bowel obstruction or, those things aren't going to fix themselves without surgery, or a hernia is not going to fix itself without surgery. And I think that it's, in full disclosure, I just want you to know that, our where vaccine science, there's a lot of points that people have issue with. We are at a place now that like polio is not a thing anymore because we had a vaccine. So there's got to be a place where we look at the actual facts of the matter without projecting nefarious intent. You know what I mean? Anyway, I just had to throw that out there because it's what I do for a living, and I can tell you that I'm not even
No,
allowed
my
to take a pen. Like, so from a physician point of view, it used to be that maybe we get a meal here or there as somebody's trying to teach us about a new medication or a new technology, but they've changed the laws so it's literally illegal for me to take a pen. So, I mean, I feel like doctors and we've, in the medical community, we've just been freaking dogpiled on, you know? People's elbow from the top rope in the last 10 or 15 years. So I'm just trying to stand up for myself a little as we go here. But anyway, I'm
no,
sorry
like
to
I said,
interrupt
I'm
you.
not, trying to
Please
cast
carry on.
aspersions upon, not no reason. And like I said, I'm not trying to cast aspersions upon anybody, as far as their profession. And like you said, I understand if I break my kneecap, I need a surgeon to fix that. But I'm just saying, as an institution, in my personal opinion, it's just either drugs or cutting you open. So when they're much more,
Yeah, I would concur that like lifestyle, it's hard for us to be healthy in our society anymore. It's hard to make healthy choices and do things to keep us out of disease instead of trying to medicate our way back to health afterwards. That's for sure.
that's
Well,
it's
and
just
that
actually,
actually I
Mm.
keep going. Sorry, Sean. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, like I said, it's just, and from my research, I feel it's just, putting band-aids on the problem to continually prescribe the patient more and more drugs, and those drugs have what are called, side effects. I mean, there's nothing side about it. These are effects, and then you prescribe them more drugs to counteract those effects, and ultimately it's just, just a snake swallowing its own tail, just a system cannibalizing itself as a result, just going in a repeated cycle of taking more and more drugs. So, I mean, that once
Yeah,
again, that's
I
just my
agree with you
personal
there.
interpretation of our healthcare
Mm.
system. So, and like I said, Rockefeller created that, to dismiss homeopathic medicine, which is, in mainstream dogmatic science, scientific orthodoxy. That's just, you know, it's impossible because the substance is so diluted that the substance can no longer have any positive effect when ultimately the healing is happening at an energetic level, a vibrational level. So, I mean, Rockefeller died, the oil tycoon J.D. Rockefeller died when he was 97 years old with his homeopath at his bedside while he was telling everybody else that it was just nonsense and hocus pocus. So, obviously, in my opinion, everything's inverted, in our, what I could consider to be you know, in the words of Alice, is nonsense, nothing would be what it is because everything would be what it isn't. Contrary-wise, what it is, it wouldn't be. What it wouldn't be, it would. You see? So, that's just my personal opinion. Truth is misinformation, war is peace, ignorance is strength, victimhood is power, conformity is rewarded, nonconformity is punished, and this is just the structure of society to where the group narrative, which is the norms of society, are what's acceptable in the Overton window. And, people like me may come along and I'm all dismissed and, ostracized, which I could care less because all I care about is the truth and discovering what the truth actually is and sharing that. I'm not trying to get anybody to believe anything that I'm saying. It's up to the individual to discern whether they feel that what I'm saying has validity, and you may not agree with everything, and that's your inherent inalienable right. It's how we learn through discussions like these, and you giving me your standpoint as a surgeon who's
Mm.
tried her whole life to heal her patients. So just respective dialogue, but ultimately the norms
Right.
of society is why people just automatically dismiss information that is what I would consider to be outside of their, programmed box of normality, because if I just strictly adhere to what the institution as the military and education told me, then I would just be a mind controlled automaton, in the sense that everything that I would be saying right now would just be parroting what the university told me and the teachers in throughout my course of learning. So, we have to, you know, I can honestly say that we could probably agree that when you analyze and observe the world, that we could see that planet Earth is a psychological warfare operation designed to hijack perception in order to control behavior, because perception is the arbiter, the governor of experience. And what you perceive results in your actions and your behavior. So if you can collectively control perception through societal norms, then you can control the world. Because, I mean, a fundamental question we should ask ourselves is, how have we gotten to this point in time to where we have this encroaching fascist AI driven surveillance state that is unfolding before our very eyes, and we continually vote for corrupt and bought and
Ugh.
paid for politicians. I mean, so how do we get to this point? We need to ask, how is it
Yeah.
possible for a small elite faction to control billions of people? I mean, it would appear to be mathematically impossible, just based on the numbers alone. How could we'll say we'll say 13, we'll say a handful of bloodline families. How is that possible for these families to control billions of people? So if we look at the world as a hierarchical pyramid of power with the all-seeing power at the top of the pyramid, then it's just a simple sequence of imposition and compliance, to where each level of the pyramid just obeys what they're being told and imposes their will on the level below. And so this sequence is imposition and compliance, until the will of those at the top of the pyramid eventually reaches the masses at the bottom of the pyramid. We talk about the 99% and the 1%. So then let's just symbolize the top as the 1%. Truth be told, it's far less than 1%. But to keep it simple, in the 99%, you, me, and all of our fellow citizens are the foundation of the pyramid. So without our cooperation, the pyramid collapses. It's a house of cards. So, tyranny is not imposed. There are never enough tyrants to impose tyranny. Yet it's a recurring theme throughout history of fascist, communist, and tyrannical dictatorships governing millions of people. So how is this possible? It's because the millions of people acquiesce to that tyranny. It's we, the people. It's our fault. We constantly delegate and outsource responsibility to politicians as if they're actually going to make some form of change that is beneficial to their constituency. And on a small local communal level, I'm saying this is possible, and there will be politicians that care about the well-being of their constituency. But when you're looking at somebody like a president who is controlled from forces behind the curtain, this is why no matter who you vote for, your life only continually gets worse. It doesn't
Same
matter,
thing.
because the same controlling force is behind every single president. This is why nothing changes. Now, the agenda might expedite at a faster pace under, let's say, under Biden than Trump, even though he was placed in position to roll out this AI dystopian agenda. But nevertheless, the point is, the Democrats, the Republican, or if you're Britain, the Labor and the Tory, or now Reform, all these parties, the same wizard behind the curtain is holding the strings to all of them. So it's a futile endeavor, politics as a whole. It's completely pointless, and is never going to change anything, because the more you centralize power, the quicker you can centralize even more power. So the will of those that are governing the country, the people get further and further detached from that. Nobody knows what's going on in Washington and the decisions they're making. So ultimately, this is why, if we do want to enact change, like the two of you have stated, on a local community level, then that's where we can start to transform this insane asylum and take our power back on a on a community-based level, based on volunteerism and consensual reciprocal agreement between our fellow citizens, rather than, I mean, do you really think a multi-billionaire cares about the well-being of the citizens of America? I mean, I will say that naivety is the psychological disease of humanity. And just as a result of perception, as stated before, which is the governor of everything, those perceptions have resulted in people continually voting and outsourcing their responsibility, because it's quite easy to say, Trump's going to do it, Trump's going to save me. And this is ultimately what I would call a savior complex, where humans just have this innate desire for someone else to come save them rather than carrying out the responsibilities themselves. So, I refuse to blame anybody else. I mean, if you look at what happened
Yeah,
in
I think
COVID,
I was just gonna
yeah,
say we are
if
the
you look what
heroes we're looking for. No one's gonna come and
yeah,
yeah.
uh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, if you want
Okay,
a
I
hero,
had a
you look in a
question
mirror, right?
about. Oh, sorry.
Okay, what?
I said, if you want a hero, look in the mirror, right?
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, and like every local area across the country has different needs and different priorities, and I mean, everywhere is different, that you can't depend on a at a national level to make good decisions for everybody. So, it's impossible.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tina, what were you going to ask?
Absolutely.
Okay, Sean, I was wondering, could you walk us through the AI surveillance, like the biosensors that are coming in the cars? And because you did a very good explanation of that, and I would love to hear that.
Well, since you just mentioned the sensors coming in cars, I mean, you have the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that section 24220 of that act says that the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration must finalize all rules on implementing what they call advanced impaired driving prevention technology inside of every new passenger vehicle by 2027. And as you rightly stated, Tina, the technology is gonna have infrared cameras, infrared sensors, and cameras embedded on the steering columns of all the vehicles, which carry out a constant biometric assessment of driver sobriety and alertness. So this system is tracking pupil dilation, drowsiness patterns, and then so if that artificial intelligence decides that you're unfit to drive, it can just prevent the ignition from starting up. So not to mention the amount
Yeah, it
of
can
electromagnetic radi-
follow your gaze, and yeah. It
yes,
can follow your gaze
yes,
and tell if you're paying attention, and yeah.
yep, exactly. And not to mention the health effects of being exposed to all this electromagnetic radiation. So, we're living in an electromagnetic soup as a result of, thousands of
Yeah.
satellites, cell towers, and well, with these technologies embedded in vehicles, the electromagnetic exposure is just, compounded that much more. And this is obviously only going to have, catastrophic health effects, as a result of being exposed to this electromagnetic radiation. So in Trump, he allocated billions of dollars for what they call, autonomous surveillance towers, spread throughout highways and along the border. And so that are using facial recognition technology to pick up on your biometrics, because we know that the ultimate goal is, as the infrastructure is in place. It's just a matter of, manipulating the serfs to accept the infrastructure, because digital tyranny is being sold to us as convenience. I mean, that's ultimately, it's always sold as convenience. So, but the the model is based on China. So if you're aware of what's going on in China, they already have biometric digital ID system connected to social credit scores, which is just based on behavior. So this system is the monetization of compliance, to where if you, and this is why these multi-billionaire big tech oligarchs who Trump is surrounded with, Peter Thiel, Palantir, obviously Elon Musk. So, but this is why these big tech oligarchs who are advancing the AI agenda, this is why they advocate for a universal basic income, because the universal basic income, because they know the ultimate end goal is to basically remove nearly all human input and have artificial intelligence and machines controlling everything. And so since there are going to be no jobs, because Meta just said that the artificial intelligence is going to be analyzing the keystrokes of their workers. So what are they doing? So the workers are contributing to having their jobs removed. Because why do you think artificial intelligence is analyzing their keystrokes? Because it's eventually designed to take their job. Just as in India, you'll see these poor workers working in these mass slave wage factories wearing these AI headsets, and the artificial intelligence is monitoring what they're doing because it's going to take all their jobs. So, I mean, as difficult as this may be for some people to comprehend, everybody, AI judges everything, is artificial intelligence is meant to take over. So this system will create an unprecedented level of control that has never been seen in human history. So it's biometric digital ID connected to carbon footprint scores, connected to a social credit system, and universal basic income that will all be based on compliance. So that means, you said something on social media the government doesn't like. Do you think you're going to be able to receive your monthly
Going
pittance
down.
if the government deems you're a dissident? So this is all a compliance-based system, this AI agenda, and Trump was selected because not elected, selected. He was put in a position to where the majority of his constituency was, I would say, was against this agenda. But since it's a savior figure, they basically rationalize and excuse of the actions that he's taken, which are completely antithetical to which he said he was going to do. Because if, I'll just use the MAGA crowd as an example. If Biden was implementing these same policies, they would be standing on their feet. This is fascism, right? Look what he's doing. But Trump does the same thing. And once again, they rationalize and excuse it so they don't have to just basically face the mental and emotional challenge of admitting that you've been
dissonance.
Tricked. So it's obviously all about control. And this is why I say, what we perceive to be independent nation states are just for public consumption. Because there is not, ultimately, when you get, as I was saying before, when you get to the top of the pyramid, that all-seeing power at the top, then all governments are controlled by the same wizard behind the curtain. And people say, oh, well, what's the evidence? Well, we can just point to logic for the evidence, because if you just look back on what happened in 2020, right? Do we think it's a coincidence that every government worldwide implemented the same exact draconian measures? Everybody's just coming up with the same idea at the same time? Or the fact that every country worldwide is implementing the same AI digital public infrastructure? So if we believe that these are actually independent nation states, then the only conclusion would be everybody's just coming up with the same idea at the same time. This doesn't make any logical sense. So ultimately that is the goal.
Sorry. How would you respond to somebody who says, well, they're responding to a similar set of circumstances with what's perceived as the best reaction at the time based on what they know at the time. Like if you have 10 countries that are receiving the same input and logic would be, a certain response, then if all 10 of them did the same reaction, perhaps that's a reasonable thing to do. Like how would you see it differently?
Well, I would say they're all getting the same exact input based on who's controlling that particular narrative and that particular piece of information. Because if you look at what happened in 2020, anybody and everybody was censored that was presenting information that was antithetical to the narrative. This is why, social media is supposed to be like the public town square for discussion to engage in ideas, but yet YouTube immediately censored anybody that was presenting information that was antithetical to the World Health Organization's narrative, because the World Health Organization is a global centralized health dictatorship that all these countries, the input and the narrative that's where they receive the information. And the World Health Organization, these were also Rockefeller created organizations. So I would say it would be extremely naive for people to think that a global body has the well-being of the global population in its best interest. So all governments were responding to the same exact narrative and to the same exact data, which is why you see medical scientists and doctors now, years after it, presenting a completely different piece of information than what was happening before. They have a little bit larger platform to expose this information, but it was impossible to have for this information to be let out at the time, because in my personal opinion, the objective was to get everybody with these nanotechnological systems in these shots. This was the entire purpose behind this scam pandemic. So the Rockefellers already created a.
So you think the vaccines had some type of nanotechnology in them?
They absolutely have nanotechnology in them. I mean, there's a multitude of countless scientists that have exposed these nanotechnological systems in the body. Graphene oxide being a primary component of these vaccines, which is ultimately a superconductor for electricity, and it amplifies electromagnetic fields, which is exactly the purpose of why they have thousands of satellites and cell towers, because these satellites and cell towers are pulsating and emitting electromagnetic waves that is interacting with these nanotechnological systems in the body. So 5G, this is scientific fact that 5G interacts with oxygen molecules and prevents the body from absorbing the proper amount of oxygen. So you can only imagine the effect this is having on children who are in school all day exposed to these 5G systems. But in relation to what you were saying about nanotechnology and graphene oxide, so it's a semiconductor of electricity, and the body-brain system is an electromagnetic communication system. The brain constructs its entire reality through electrical information. So we're having a conversation right now, but words aren't passing between us. My vocal cords are generating a vibrational frequency in the form of sound waves. The hearing senses are transforming those sound waves into electrical information, and the brain is decoding that electrical information into what appear to be words passing between us. But ultimately, words are just frequencies. Therefore, different languages are different frequencies. So the graphene oxide is a superconductor of electricity, and these cell towers and satellites are pulsating these waves and therefore interacting with the nanotechnological systems in the graphene oxide, which is then the only logical conclusion is that the brain processes information electrically. So you're going to rewire how the brain processes information as a result of these materials found in the body. So, and once again, it's an amplifier
So tell us
of
about your source for
electromagnetic
this.
fields. Huh? Dr. Anna Maria Mahalcia,
Tell us about
Dr.
your
James
source.
Giordano. Oops, yeah. Huh? What'd you say, Lisa?
Yeah, that's you're answering my question. I was just curious about your sources for this information.
Dr. Anna
You know,
Maria Mahalcia, MIH. I can't hear you, Tina. I'm sorry.
this lag is sorry. No, the lag is just annoying me here. Okay. So I listen to Sabrina Wallace sometimes and she talks about the W band a lot. And so I've heard of these things. As the healthcare providers, it's one of those things where, we do read the studies and there's so much conflicting information. And again, I feel like the narratives that they feed you are to confuse you. So it's a lot. But okay, Sean, what
You
going
talking?
forward do we need to do? What?
You mentioned wireless body access networks, and there was just a smart dust patent filed, patent 113546666B1, that literally uses tiny airborne devices with sensors embedded in these devices that can literally collect your biometric data. These are patents. So this isn't conjecture. I'm
Yeah.
not pontificating here. These are patents designed to do exactly what you just said, as far as literally releasing tiny airborne sensory devices into the atmosphere that can collect our biometric data. That recently in Iran, the fighter pilot was down and they were able to locate the fighter pilot through a
Yeah.
CIA AI spyware tool, Ghost Murmur, which is able to use artificial intelligence to detect the electromagnetic signal emitted by the heartbeat. So they use sensors to lock in to the electromagnetic fingerprint that a heartbeat produces every single time it beats, every single second. And then they use artificial intelligence to filter out all the background information to locate that electromagnetic signal produced by the heartbeat. So this is basic fact at this point. You can look up the Ghost Murmur, the CIA document, the tool they're using. So the Sabrina Wallace and the wireless body air access networks are already in use, and this is so far, we're going into such sci-fi dystopian levels here that it is difficult for most people to be able to comprehend. But the fact of the matter is, the technological capabilities in public consumption are at a rudimentary, elementary level compared to what they have in the deep underground military bases and the secret projects. So all this technology is already available, 6G, 7G, 8, 9, whatever it is, the technology is already available. So it's just a matter of acclimating the population to accepting this technology. You can't go from riding horse and buggies to hovercrafts. It's just too overwhelming for the collective psyche to process. So you have to increment this technological dystopia in steps in order to look at the phone. The phone has become an appendage. So you get people addicted to holding the technology. Then you get them to put it on their body in the form of headphones and earbuds all the time that are frying your brain, because that's an electromagnetic signal that your brain is processing all the time. So what do you think that's going to have? You see people all the time with the earbuds in. What do you think that's doing to your brain? The electromagnetic radiation. The brain is processing all of that. So it's just a matter of going from what you can hold to put it on your body to being inside of the body. And ultimately, it already is inside of the body. So, and I'm not saying this to fear monger, because there are solutions to where we can counteract this nefarious agenda through consciousness, through expanded states of consciousness, which are ultimately, more
Okay, tell
powerful
us
than
more
any
about
form
that.
of this technology. Excuse me?
Yeah, tell us more about that.
Well, ultimately, the solution, philosopher Krishnamurti once said that if we can really understand the problem, then the solution will come out of it, because the solution is not separate from the problem. So then, it is my contention that self-identity is the problem and the solution. Because if you look at, for thousands of years, for the few to control the many, you've had to control them as a result of belief systems, movable, wavering, rigid belief systems. And then these belief systems are just played off against each other, and you have a perfect recipe to divide and rule the masses. And a belief system is a manifestation of what?
You mean like,
of self-identity.
like religion or
religion, culture,
political beliefs, that
nationality.
kind of, just globally.
Globally, exactly. Religion, culture, politics, scientific orthodoxy, nationality. It's nothing. Of course, there's nothing wrong with enjoying these experiences. You're an American, you're a Christian, whatever the case may be. That's perfectly fine. But there's a mass difference between believing these experiences are who and what you are, rather than knowing that they're just simply brief, transitory experiences. So, in my opinion, self-identity is therefore the problem and the ultimate solution that will set us free from this continual division. I mean, just look at the world. Everybody's always picking a side based off what? Their self-identity. Well, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Jew, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Russian, I'm a American. It's just constant hostility and tension and friction as a result of these dogmatic beliefs. So you can enjoy these experiences while at the same time knowing ultimately that's all they are, is brief experiences. The body is a vessel. It is a vehicle for consciousness to have this brief, transitory experience. It is consciousness, an interconnected, universal web. And ultimately, at the ultimate core, we're all one. And this transformation in self-identity from, think about it. You're born into this experience, and from day one, you're meant to believe that you're a human. Who and what you are is the body. And this is just universally accepted that humans are ultimately who and what we are. But when you identify with the body, you automatically identify with limitation. That's what the body is. It is limited. It is the idea of I can't, and that's not possible, because you're limited when you identify with the body. But when you know that the body is just a vessel for consciousness to have this experience, you can then begin to expand perception, which results in expanded states of awareness and higher levels of consciousness. And once you begin to realize that, you become the observer of this experience rather than getting sucked in and tethered to all the everyday dramas of this human experience. You can just take a step back and observe the madness, because this is madness. This experience is utter madness. Endless war, poverty, famine, starvation, deprivation, misery, suffering. It's just sheer and utter madness. And this ultimately brings people into a low vibrational awareness, understandably, because we're constantly being bombarded with all these traumatic events on a daily basis to ultimately induce the disassociation. This is trauma-based mind control, to induce dissociation, fragment the mind, because a traumatized mind is highly suggestible and easily manipulable. And this is why fear is the foundation of everything in our world. Just look at it. Everything is designed to induce fear of not surviving, fear of not being able to feed your children, fear of losing your job, fear of losing your relationships. It's just constant fear. And that the automatic consequence of that fear is low vibrational awareness, and which is that much easier to control. But what I'm saying in relation to consciousness is that the more and more you attune with consciousness, higher expanded levels of awareness, you can begin to alleviate and mitigate that mental and emotional impact that drags you down. You can mitigate it because you recognize the world for what it is, because you're observing the world rather than believing that you are the experience. You're not the experience. Consciousness is the observer of this experience if you allow it. So people talk about what's the solution? What's the solution? That is the solution. Consciousness, a revolution in consciousness, higher expanded states of awareness, because a consciousness oriented society would never create such a world. It just wouldn't. It's antithetical to the source, that is unconditional love and wisdom. You can compare it to an avatar society, I guess, would be the most simplistic example. A heart-based society rather than a brain-based society based on the intellect. The heart is ultimately the source to connect us to our higher levels of awareness. And the basis of that is self-identity. So, I'm a former Marine and an American and all these other things, but these are just experiences. That's all they are experiences for my consciousness to briefly have. And I know once my body, my vessel ceases to function, then consciousness, who and what I truly am, will continue its exploration through forever. There's no such thing as death. There's only life. There's nothing to fear. This is just consciousness, infinitely experiencing infinity forever. That's all it is. And the sooner people realize that, the sooner we can transform this inverted prison into a paradise. So consciousness can mitigate all these nefarious technological machinations that we just discussed. It can override that. But if you believe who and what you are is the body, then you're going to be subjected to perceived consequences of the body in relation to all these different avenues of toxicity that are designed to undermine us to produce a docile, apathetic, and indifferent population. They don't put fluoride in the water because it's good for your teeth. I mean, fluoridated water calcifies our pineal gland, and it was all a Nazi concoction. The Nazis thought of putting fluoridated water to make a docile population, preservatives, additives, genetically modified food, synthetic meat. So all of it is designed to undermine our physical and our mental well-being to control us. So consciousness can override all that if we just remember who we are. We must remember who we are and quit identifying with the labels of a human life. I'm my name, my race, my religion, my culture, my nationality. Like, no, you're none of those things. These are brief, transitory experiences. If I would say your consciousness.
That is very interesting. Not human, consciousness. That should, yes. Well, we're coming up on about 45 minutes here.
Wow, that went fast.
That is a lot to chew on.
I can really go on for hours and hours and hours if you give me the, and I'm, based off of, the vibration, I'm sure you don't agree with many of the things that I'm saying, but at least your minds are open to at least listening to what it is that I have to say. And that's all that matters. Nobody has to agree with anything that I'm saying. I'm just trying to present a different side, a different perspective. And then you can, ponder on it in times of silence, but it's not my objective to make anybody believe anything that I'm saying. But if I didn't think it had validity, I wouldn't say it. So, but
Mm, I actually have read all of the things that you have talked about, and I don't disagree with a lot of it. So, we are at a point in time where we are learning that everything we were told and believed in is a lie. And the conspiracy theories are true a lot of the time. So I do not discount anything at this point. Um and your consciousness conversations, that makes so much sense to me. So I don't I would not say that at all, and I am always open to listening to points of view, to respectful people, and that is also what I believe will get us through this.
Yeah.
So I also
I absolutely
appreciate
agree.
you taking the time.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think about consciousness. You're certainly not the first person to say that we have the ability to break free of our body. I think anybody that meditates or, people that have had like experiences with certain hallucinogen drugs, will describe a consciousness that's not the same as what we're used to on the daily. And as far as science goes, I'm kind of like, as a scientist myself, I have I think what you would call a naive view that we're working with a certain set of information that we have perceived as true. And as we learn different or more or better, we try to change our beliefs accordingly, right? So I always
Yes.
try to keep an open mind about new information for just based on that paradigm. I'm sorry
Yeah,
about the
absolutely.
lag. It does
Yeah.
make it a little harder to communicate.
I hope you can get this information across, but nevertheless, I agree with exactly what you're saying. You have access to certain forms of information, and you base what your profession, your practice off of the information at your disposal. So, absolutely. So it's understandable for the medical profession or scientists to think along a certain paradigm as a result of the information they have access
Mhm.
to. So,
And what I'm hearing you say is that people can do that with the best interest in mind, but that the information that they're seeing is not accurate. Is that fair to say?
I would absolutely say that, Lisa. Like I said, I want to emphasize and reiterate that I'm not generalizing anybody. I'm just talking about it as an institution. We have to remove
Mhm.
ourselves from this black and white polarity because good cops, good teachers, bad teachers, medical practitioner, scientists, there's good in everything.
Mhm.
And people do
Absolutely.
have the well-being of their patients, their students at heart. I'm just saying, as an institution, that isn't its
Mhm.
intended design. So the World Health Organization is the global health
Well,
dictatorial body, but the majority of people that work in the health organization aren't enacting those same ideas. They're just doing what they're told, and many will have best intentions at heart. I'm just saying
yeah,
that as an institution, these
right. Which
bodies
their
are
best
corrupted,
intention,
and we're what was that, Lisa?
yeah, they're just trying to coordinate information around the world to put best practices out there. But if I hear what you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it really doesn't matter because as a consciousness, what we are perceiving is like it's like a movie. It's like I don't know. It's not
It
real.
ex-
It's just what we are perceiving to be real. Am I right? Is that what you're thinking? It's kind of trippy
yes,
for a
Lisa.
person that doesn't think about
Uh,
this much
yes.
to wrap your brain around that.
Yes, I would absolutely say that, Lisa. If you just look at
Like,
the nature of reality, if you just look at the nature of reality, the foundational basis of reality is just energy. So, and when people realize that information is encoded in energy, and that's ultimately how we're creating our reality. Quantum physics has already shown this to be true. So, they say accidents happen, but in a quantum universe, there are no such thing as accidents. Only possibilities and probabilities fold into existence by perception. So what quantum physics calls the observer effect, to where the wave doesn't transform into a particle until it's observed. So ultimately, reality doesn't exist without observation. So we're constantly creating our own reality based off of perception. So they manipulate us into believing that we're responding to an external environment when actually that external environment is a reflection of the collective internal environment. So we have created this lunatic asylum as a result of, falsified beliefs and just perception, manipulated perception. We have created this experience because everything is a manifestation of what's happening internally that we create externally. So what you said, reality is just how we perceive it. Once again, quantum physics has shown that to be true, and that reality doesn't exist without the observer. So waves, think about it.
You know what
like
I read
this.
the other day?
What?
Okay, go ahead.
What'd you say you read, Lisa?
I read that Jim Morrison from The Doors, that
Yeah. Yeah.
The Doors came from a quote about perception of reality or whatever, that his dad was in the CIA. Anybody know if that's true?
Absolutely.
But I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Please go ahead. You're talking about particles and waves.
These people, well, just to go off of that, these people in these positions are groomed to be in those positions. And a lot of them do come from CIA military intelligence backgrounds. Elon Musk's, his grandfather was the head of the technocracy movement in the 1930s and created what he called the technate of North America, which coincidentally was Canada, North America, Central America, down to the top half of South America, Venezuela and Colombia. And then its ending point of the technate was coincidentally Greenland. So these aren't coincidences that Trump says, oh, I want to annex Greenland. This is all part of the technocracy movement. So it's not a coincidence that Elon Musk is in the position he's in, and his grandfather was a leading proponent of technocracy and a Nazi sympathizer at well, who emigrated from Canada to South Africa, which, because the Canadian government, got wise to what he was promoting as far as technocracy, so he emigrated from Canada to South Africa, where Elon Musk was born. So another example would be Jeff Bezos, whose grandfather was a co-founder of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the technological development arm of the Pentagon. So what's the likelihood that this multi-billionaire, trillionaire, head of Amazon's grandfather is a co-founder of DARPA? And then you have Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg, who created Facebook sitting in his bedroom in a college dorm. Like, the CIA had a program, or DARPA had a program called LifeLog, which was designed to have a digital autobiography of every human being, collecting, storing, and analyzing an individual's experiences and creating a digital autobiography of those experiences and that data. And then right after the program ended, Facebook came into existence. And what is Facebook? It's a digital autobiography that all the information you put on Facebook is being collected, stored, and analyzed to create a digital version of yourself. So those are just three examples that are related to you saying Jim Morrison's familial lineage has an intelligence background, because many of these big tech oligarchs have a similar background as well. So Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, these are just the faces of the organization. They're just faces. They're rich, nevertheless, but they're not the ones actually controlling the organization. Starlink, these are NASA, Pentagon operations. And Elon Musk is just a face. He says he spends 80% of his time engineering like he can barely form a complete sentence. Like, there's no possible way he's engineering all the time and creating all of these technological advancements. The people behind the curtain in the shadows, intel agencies, those are the ones who are ultimately in charge. So that's similar to what you were saying with Jim Morrison having an intelligent background, and then him being like a dominant, rock and roll figure, which is able to have mass perceptual control, right? You put people even put in musicians. They have a mass effect on being able to hypnotize the masses through their music. So they're useful to controlling public perception. So many of these people do have these similar backgrounds to what you just stated. But you're absolutely right as far as it's trippy to think that we're not actually having this experience right now in the way that we perceive to be having the experience, because the experience is only a manifestation of observation, as it is information.
I imagine a lot of people out
encoded
there
in
listening.
waves.
Imagine a lot of people are thinking, I wish I could perceive myself like with a beach house and my back not hurting. if it's a perception.
And I mean, it's not just spontaneous combustion. It's going to happen automatically, but you can use consciousness and perception to heal your back through vibrational medicine. This is actually achievable and feasible. I mean, obviously it's not instantaneous, and it is a gradual process, and we have to override all the various means that are undermining our health physically and mentally. But ultimately, just to end on what I'm saying, I didn't mean to go on and on, but reality in its base state is just waveform information encoded with information. So the simplest analogy and example would be Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is a waveform information field of radiation. Wi-Fi in its base state, you can't see it. You can't see Wi-Fi. It's in this room right now, but I can't see it because it exists outside of visible light. But Wi-Fi is waveform radiation fields that are encoded with information. So you turn on the computer, and
I just have to say that I have to admit that I didn't know what Wi-Fi meant.
So, no worries. Lots of people know what Wi-Fi is. They turn it on, but they don't necessarily know the semantics of how it functions and operates. But it's really simple when you break it down to its fundamentals, which is, like I said, Wi-Fi is, and I'm going to relate this to how we experience reality, which is similar to a computer decoding Wi-Fi. We're decoding basically cosmic Wi-Fi, the cosmic internet, which is just information. Everything is information encoded in energy. So Wi-Fi is a waveform information field in the form of radiation. The computer locks in to that waveform information field and decodes that information into what we're seeing on the screen right now. Text, graphics, pictures, images. The computer is locking in to that waveform information field and decoding that information in the same way that the five senses and DNA and the central nervous system and the genetic structure are locking in to the universal waveform information field, and we are decoding that information on a continual, never-ending basis. So in that sense, just as the computer is decoding the Wi-Fi information, the biological computer is decoding the universal energetic field of information. I hope that was understandable, but it's basically the same exact principle.
It's that type of thinking is something that I'll have to listen to that couple sentences like 5 times, and then I'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, I just need to sit and stare off into space and think about this for a while when we're done today.
And then
It's great.
And just one more, then I'll
You've
be
given me a lot to
Thank
think
you.
about.
One more.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you look at a virtual reality experience, right? This is another similar analogy in how we create reality. So you put on a virtual reality headset, and that information is hacking in to your five senses, and you have a completely different perception as a result of the information that your five senses are decoding, right? I mean, just look up a virtual reality compilation online. It completely transforms people's entire perception of reality. They think they're getting chased, or they're ambushed, or a bear's over there. They're acting frantically because the virtual reality headset has hacked in to the five senses, and now they are decoding a different form of information. So you can look at this reality, this virtual reality matrix, as the five senses are decoding that information and projecting it to on what appears on our screen. So the computer decodes the information from the Wi-Fi field, right? And projects it onto the computer screen, right? Well, the five senses are decoding the universal cosmic information field and projecting it into what appears on our screen. But where does that screen exist? It exists in here, the same place the information on the computer exists. It exists inside the computer, just as your whole entire reality exists in here. It doesn't exist outside of you. This is just our perception of it. And granted, it does it does feel very real. I'll give you that. Nobody's trying to argue it doesn't feel real.
Yeah.
But it's all just an illusion created by our own minds. The same thing with solidity, right? We think reality is it being physical resistance, but I'm sitting in a chair, but what appears to be physical resistance is actually electromagnetic resistance. So I'm sitting on a chair right now, and electromagnetic resistance prevents me from falling through the chair, and the chair through the floor, and the floor through the earth. There is no solidity. This is just all illusory electromagnetic resistance in a holographic reality. So this is why the universe is an electrical system. The body, brain is an electromagnetic system, because everything is this is just one gigantic interconnected electrical system. So, I mean, quantum physics has shown this to be true. They found the binary codes of on and off electrical charges of computers. They found those embedded in the fabric of reality. So why would computer codes be embedded in the fabric of reality? So this is ultimately a vast interconnected electrical system. So it is, based off what you said, Lisa, it is mind-boggling to conceive that everything is just a manifestation of perception, and ultimately the fundamental pillar
I have one
of our
thought,
reality is
a thought on that, and a question for you. One is like, when I'm hearing what you're saying, I think of a couple things. One is like phantom limb syndrome, when people have had a limb amputated, and then they still their brain perceives pain or a sensation in the limb that's not there anymore. Or like when you're watching a movie and you know damn good and well, but then something happens and you jump start, like clearly you're having a reaction to the perception of the movie and not your immediate surroundings. And then what do you think has happened to the missing and unalived scientists? Do you have any thought on how what they do for a living and what they're studying interconnects with your thoughts on these things?
I mean, I can't definitively say what has exactly happened to the scientists, but I mean, there are, many scientists who do work in these underground projects and these deep underground military bases, or perhaps scientists that have, found a cure for cancer, or to be able to, harness energy from the ether based off Tesla technology, because energy is all around us. There's no reason why we shouldn't all have access to free energy, because we're surrounded. This is an energetic environment and an energetic atmosphere. It's all around us. So, but that's not, you can't control people with that, can you? You need fossil fuels and electricity bills and utility bills and so forth. So, but as far as the missing scientists, I mean, some of them could be dead. Some of them might not be dead. I mean, it could, it's psychological warfare operation designed to hijack attention, because we're constantly thrown one traumatic event after another traumatic event to hijack our attention. And energy flows where attention goes. And the idea is to harness our energy and hijack our energy. So there's a multitude of different diversionary tactics to basically get the population to focus on what's going on over here when the magician is carrying out his trick over here. So, you had the shooting in the White House or whatever. I mean, these are all just psychological warfare operations designed to hijack attention. Like the Iran war. I mean, the Iran war was purposefully manufactured to transform the global economic system. So basically, since World War II, the status quo of how our world has been, the order of our world based off, the Bretton Woods Agreement and that particular economic system. So, but if you want to create your AI-driven digital dystopian surveillance infrastructure to where you have a one world government, a one world electronic currency, a one world army, where you deplete nation states and put them into super states, similar to what Orwell described in his 1984 novel, which had profound truths in it. But in order to do that, you have to transform the current status quo. And this is precisely what the Iran war is doing, because the foundational pillar of human civilization is energy. It's energy. It's the basis of everything. So if you're destroying nation states and people's ability to access energy, then you're ultimately going to transform that civilizational state. So the Iran war was purposely manufactured to do that, to try to manufacture famine and starvation and to diminish the energy supply. Because if you control oil, you control nations, you control food, you control people. So this isn't just for a bit of fun. As you said, you're literally watching a movie script unfold. These people are actors. Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin. These are people playing out a specific role on a stage, and they're told what to do from people that you'll never see. What the greatest trick the devil ever pulled off was making people believe he didn't exist. So the wizard stayed behind the curtain to retain its power. So they're all in on it. And this is a globally coordinated effort to transform the current status quo. So they're transforming the post-World War II status quo. You hear these people all the time. Mark Carney, the current Canadian Prime Minister, said it. The old world is gone. Yeah, the old world is gone because that's the design. People say, oh, Trump's dismantling the New World Order. The New World Order that created the post-World War II system is the same New World Order that's creating this AI digital dystopia. And he was set in place as a chaos agent, as a wrecking ball to just dismantle the current status quo to lead us into this AI-driven digital dystopia. So all these are coordinated events, and nothing that's happening is organic or random when it comes to global transforming events. Nothing is random. This is all in accordance with a pre-planned, preordained script. You're basically watching a World Wrestling Federation script unfold, and the people that you're voting for are just actors within that script. So once again, people say, well,
sometimes literally,
what's your evidence? What's your evidence to prove that? Well, just try to fit the pieces together in regard to what I just said. So the idea is to make us focus on the trees without seeing the forest, when the trees are all connected to the same forest. The pixels are all connected to the same picture. But if you can isolate attention on those pixels, then people are just going to look at world events as everything's random. everything that's happening is random, and is unfolding by the minute. No, no, no. This is all from a plan, a preordained script. So it's all manufactured. So we must see the trees for the forest, and then we can begin to realize that these aren't isolated events.
Yeah. Once again, like literally when we hang up, I'm just going to sit here and stare at the wall and think about this stuff we've talked about today.
And I'm sorry, I
Thank,
didn't mean to,
thank you.
your scientist question.
Yeah. Yeah.
But look at like
No, it's okay.
mass
I
mic.
mean,
These are
the
like,
reason we, yeah, the reason we're glad you're here is we like to hear all different perspectives and thought processes. And I like what I do for a living. I don't take any offense to what your opinion is. That's okay.
and I commend you for having an open mind and listening to what I have to say. So like you said, you can go back, sit in silence, lie in your bed, zone out, and just try to ponder on what has been said. Obviously you're not going to adhere to everything, but at least sparks curiosity. Curiosity was what makes us continually strive to uncover the truth. So it's that curiosity that can transform our perception, and therefore give people different perspectives by sharing this information. So I greatly appreciate you having an open mind and listening to what I have to say. And it's just all out of mutual respect. I'm not trying to impose any form of
Yeah.
information on anybody else. It's up to the individual to discern what I've said, and it's your
Mm,
inherent right as a free, sovereign human being to come to your own conclusions and believe whatever it is you
Yes.
want to believe.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
We love
you know,
that statement right there. Thank you,
so
Sean. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Yeah. Thanks for your time. We
thank you so
appreciate you
much.
being here.
And I appreciate you giving me
I
a
will
voice to
link
speak.
your
And
TikTok. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll attach your TikTok handle down at the bottom of this recording so you guys can look him up. He has some awesome, super informative videos. Um, anything else, guys?
can I just say
Nothing?
I just want to
just
say
in,
thanks
in
for
my
your patience with the lag. Thank you.
No worries. I appreciate giving me the opportunity. My website as well, perceptionreset.com, where I have thousands of articles across a wide range of subjects. Like you were asking for sources, you say, you can go on there and, scroll through there. You do it for days and weeks at a time. A multitude of information on there. So my website, perceptionreset.com. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. Bye,
Thank you.
guys. Have a good
Thanks. Have
night.
a good night. Have a great week. Bye.